Welcome to another video on another peak era BMW with a very awkward belt giver, or whatever you want to call it. So, this peak era BMW comes from the good man Sreten, or M539 Restoration, so a big thank you to him. And yeah, for some reason these peak BMWs keep coming from the same man. The last one was the E92 M3, and that was a manual, and here we also have a manual, paired with a fantastic S65 V8 engine. It's a cold fall morning in Germany right now, so let's warm up the engine, but let's get some facts straight on this car. First of all, the car has 246,000 kilometers is what I'm reading right now, which I find fantastic. The car is in excellent condition, as you'd expect from Sreten. I'm in Germany right now for a few weeks, and he's been very kind to lend me the car and also to say, go, have a blast. And the great thing about Sreten is when I picked up the car from Frankfurt and we were debating about an F80 M3, E92 M3, S55 versus S65, and I was kind of on the side of the F80 just because it's more usable. I'm not even kidding you, 5 minutes after I drove this car and I started to get the rev band up, I sent him a text. I said, the S55, S65 is the way to go, I need this car. He laughed and he said, it revs to 8200, take it all the way. That's the man that Sreten is. I started to question myself, and I told him I'm going to drive a lot of kilometers with the car, and I was trying to think why, and my thinking is he works in a lot of cars, he restores a lot of cars, he simply does not have the time to put all the kilometers on all of the cars that he'd like to do, and he's happy if the cars get the kilometers because they basically prove the mechanical rigidity that these cars have. You can rebuild an S65 250,000 kilometers and give it full beans and it'll last, and I think that's amazing. And let me tell you, this car is so solid. Nothing is rattling. It drives like a Jahreswagen, or like a year-old car, you would call it. It is super solid, and the engine pulls. It pulls way better than any M3, E92 M3 I've ever been in. And I'll tell you why in a minute. Let's get some facts straight about the car. So for me, I'm kind of almost driving a little bit of a childhood poster car again, because when this car came out, I did not have a license yet, and I was dying to be able to drive this car. My brother was a bit older, he drove this car quite a bit and definitely infected me with the BMW. So to be able to get to drive this car now, more than 10 years later, and kind of do a bit of a video about it, feels kind of special for me. And basically what I want to talk to you guys about is why is this car so good, and why would I prefer taking this over newer cars. I've been driving a lot of newer cars lately, and they just feel too digital, and they feel too disconnected somehow. Call me old, call me a dinosaur, whatever. But this thing is just pure. There's no turbos, there's not as many electrics, it is just super simple, especially in this setup with the naturally aspirated V8 up there, the 6-speed manual transmission, rear-wheel drive, that's all you have. There's no assists. Honestly, it's just such a pure and simple car. That's 3,500 revs. It still has more than double to go. And the reason I'm starting to smile is because of the intake noise. So basically, let's start with the front. The engine has a full Aventurri carbon airbox, which is just absolutely nuts. The amount of intake noise you hear, it's not too much, it's just right, but it just gives you goosebumps over and over again, and you keep on wanting to rev the engine out. It's completely addicting. So another reason the car pulls so well is Sreten did completely rebuild the engine, and I would suggest, if you want to know all of the details of the car, please do check out his videos. He does talk about everything in depth. Definitely take a look at that. A few facts about the engine is he's completely rebuilt it, so it's freshly honed. It has aluminium heads, it has shrink cams, it has the carbon airbox, it has ported heads, it has upgraded main bearings and rod bearings, and it is finally tuned by Infinitas on the dyno, and this is where the spectacular thing comes out. It has 442 horsepower on the dyno. And most S65s are known to stray down, so they have less power than initially given by factory, around 370, 390 horsepower. So this is a solid 440 horsepower running engine, and you do feel that. It pulls on the Autobahn so good, and especially with it being a naturally aspirated high revving V8, it just wants to keep revving, and the power is up there, and it just keeps going. For me, the best feeling is when you're in third gear, revving it all the way up, you throw it into fourth, and it just keeps going. One point at nighttime on the Autobahn, we hit 328, which is pretty spectacular for an old car, if you will, with 250,000 kilometers. Also, I have to say, in the meantime, I only trust myself doing this at nighttime because drivers in Germany have gotten so unbelievably bad. It's not even funny anymore. People just pull out without checking the mirrors, people stay in the left lane, and it's not even me driving aggressively, it's genuinely people just being completely unaware of their surroundings. Really dangerous. Something needs to happen there. Drivers need to become more aware of their surroundings. This is how accidents happen. Let's get the revs a little bit higher and see what this car is all about. What I also have to say, the 3 Series Coupe, in my opinion, it can very, very quickly become not so tasteful if it's tuned not so nicely. And it doesn't take much. Some black kidneys, some carbon lips and this and that, and it quickly becomes, it's too much of a tuner car. Now what I like about this, it looks completely stock, and there's not even any window tint. Chrome kidneys, stock wheels, it's not lowered. I personally probably would lower it a little bit. It is such a subtle car. Modern M cars have so many styling cues and spoilers here and M badges there and lips there, whether it's functional or not. And this car is actually very subtle. I mean, yeah, it has the wider chassis, it has big tires, but it only has a couple cues which let you know that it's the M3. The 4 exhaust tips on the back, the gills on the side, the typical double M mirrors, power dome on the front, and the bumper, and that is pretty much it. Of course, you have the M3 badge as well. Speaking of which, I can guarantee you this car has less M badges than a modern 2 Series Active Tourer with M package. I mean, think about that. I mean, that's just how times have changed. Kind of a shame, but yeah, that's why I like to look back at this era and just enjoy the car. And also the exhaust. Many people put loud exhaust on the car. This, it's pretty much completely stock. Most of the sound comes from the intake sound, and that's what you need. On the inside, it is a complete sound fest, and on the outside, in my opinion, it sounds just right. Not too loud and obnoxious, but not completely muffled and silent. It is really such a sweet spot. Which brings this S65 sound out. And what I do have to say, this S65, it has such a unique sound. It's a V8 clutter, not even clutter, it's more like a sewing machine noise, like a mechanical symphony that no other V8 has. I don't know how they did it, but really sometimes I hear a S65 going by and without seeing it, I know it's a S65 because it's this metallic-y, mechanical noise. It is so nice. that's 4,000 revs, and that is kind of this lower rev range where you give the engine a lot of throttle and it has to work, it has to use torque and force. That's almost the best sound for me. It just gives you goosebumps, and just in that range is such a resonance and vibrance. It sounds so good. Guaranteed smiles, honestly. And of course, as you'd expect from Sreten, everything else has pretty much been refreshed. Brakes, front suspension, some things to keep it fresh, such as a new steering wheel. And as per usual, the car is extremely well put together and nothing is rattling or seems worn out. It just works. Despite the 246,000 kilometers, it's just a number. And I actually like having a high number down there, because then you're not afraid putting more kilometers on the car, which is what it's meant to be. I think there's nothing worse than having little kilometers and wanting to keep it that way. I mean, it's not what the car is there for. Then, next to the 6-speed manual transmission, the only things we can change is we turn the traction control off, which is what we're definitely going to do. We have the power button, which isn't a power button like in the 60 M5, where it actually unlocks more power. It pretty much just changes the throttle line, which I have to say, I do like having the sharp throttle for heel and toe, but for normal driving I actually prefer having it off, because it's just smoother and it's more natural normal driving. Otherwise the car becomes kind of jerky. And then lastly we have the EDC, the electronic damper control, which has 2 steps, and in this case they're upgraded Bilstein dampers by Evolve, which Sreten has installed. I have to say they're pretty fantastic, because in comfort the car drives very comfortable. It's more comfortable than a stock E92. With the manual and the quiet V8, you can genuinely drive it around like a 360i. I'm not even kidding, and nobody looks at the car whatsoever. If you put it in the first step, it becomes a little bit more stiff, good for country roads, B roads, Autobahn, whatever. And in the second step, it actually almost becomes too stiff, I'm not gonna lie, especially for public roads, there's no use for that. But if you take it to a super smooth Autobahn or the racetrack, that's pretty much perfect. Really do like the adjustability of that, and most of the time I drive around in comfort, it's super comfortable and easygoing, which is pretty nice. There's nothing more annoying than driving a car which is fast, but then having it judder around in cities and country roads and normal things. So, and to the question, double clutch transmission or manual transmission, I think it's a preference thing. I've driven the double clutch, we actually even did a video on that, the blue one, that was years ago. The engine is so good with the double clutch, and the double clutch is actually also really good. It is so fast, it's a lot of fun, but for more engagement, I just prefer the manual transmission, especially doing heel and toe in combination with that intake, with that engine sound. Come on, who needs that? We're not doing a competition. Another thing I have to say is the hydraulic steering and the power. This car is so wonderful to drift. Oh god, I just can't get enough. And it's so predictable, it's so easy. It is just, the car makes it easy. And then paired with that sound, with that tune, I mean, the horsepower doesn't matter. The amount of horsepower, the speed, the acceleration, all doesn't matter, especially not in public roads, where it's just about having a nice, joyful drive, like driving an old-timer. It's not about the speed, and that's why I really struggle with all the modern EVs that boast about their 0 to 60 time and the horsepower and all this stuff. It's all things that just simply do not matter. What matters is the feeling you get when you drive and the smile this gives you. And I'm sorry, the EV is just not going to be able to give you this smile and this addiction. I've driven many EVs, great for daily runabout, going to the bakery, what so not, but it doesn't make me smile like this. Again, this car for me really is peak BMW. Once again, I mean, how crazy were the engineers and was the board to sign this car off to say, yes, we're going to make a 3 Series with the V8 up front. The engine is so big it actually needs a power dome. I mean, the airbox does stick out. I can't get enough. What a good car. Good lord. I feel like the cars just get better because they're such a testament of the time. It is such a time capsule. Let me tell you what, now that I've sold the E46, I am seriously considering getting one of these. I know there's a bunch of them out there, a bunch of builds, and it's been seen a bunch of times on YouTube, but so what? I would love to have one. Oh, big thank you to Sreten, again, M539 Restorations. Please do check him out. His videos are so satisfying to watch and you learn so much, and it helps give you confidence that you can actually own old BMWs without it completely putting you in bankruptcy. I sure as hell need one, that's a problem, especially with the carbon airbox. Just listen to that. Unbelievable. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let's enjoy the roads